Okay, cool. So I'm here with Chris Schreiber, the head of marketing at Qwilr. Chris, how are you?
Doing great, thanks.
Um, I'm excited to chat with you about this content marketing role. Maybe first, so could you just tell us a little bit about Qwilr? Kind of who is Qwilr? What does Qwilr do?
Yeah, definitely. Quiller, it's what we call a smart document system. So it's a very flexible tool, essentially create content, typically kind of sales and marketing content. So that could be sales proposals, that could be sort of collateral, case studies, marketing content. And the thing that makes it unique is we make it really easy to create any type of content as a web page. And it can be a personalized web page that you send to your prospects. And there's a lot of functionality that we can bake in with it. So you can transact, like you can sign a document, you can pay for a
Mhm.
service. And so what we think about sort of the secret sauce of Quiller is the DTA method: design, transactions, automation. There's very few companies that sort of brought all that together into one document system. So it's an exciting space.
That's really cool. And the company's based in Sydney, is that right?
Yep, it was founded in Sydney. I'm based in San Francisco in California. There's a large US presence. And then we also have offices in Europe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe I'm sure not right now, but one day, does whoever ends up with this job get to go hang out in Sydney for a little while?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the company is known for doing really awesome full company retreats somewhere close to Sydney, but get to explore Australia and definitely have a good time.
Yeah, that's cool. I used to work for a Sydney-based startup as a remote content marketer and got to go to Sydney for a couple weeks, and it's just like the most beautiful city in the world. It's just awesome.
Good times.
Um, so this content marketing manager role, could you just kind of give us, or actually maybe first before we talk specifically about that, what does marketing look like at Qwilr? Like, I'd just be curious, like what does your team look like? What's the makeup of it?
Yeah. So we've got demand generation manager who works on sort of paid media, SEO, strategy, and kind of different types of campaigns that we might be running in a given quarter. Product marketing, who works on sort of go to market as well as sales enablement. Marketing operations associate, make sure sort of all the data is flowing well, and also helps out on kind of different campaigns and sales enablement work. And then we've got a few sort of contractors that we work with on PR communications.
Nice.
That's sort of the core work. Yep.
Okay, cool. And so then for this role specifically, is there a certain lever you're trying to move with content marketing by hiring this person? Like, for example, like, are you trying to just build up top of funnel? Is it a traffic thing? Will they be working kind of across the funnel to chip in with the sales enablement as well as, product marketing and other things? Or, what, like, this is kind of a big question, but yeah, could you kind of paint the picture of like what this role will be fulfilling at Quiller?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely trying to grow the top of funnel. Like we've created a really nice engine here. Majority of the business come through has been through our sort of free trial and self-serve flow, and now we're starting to sort of build on top of that foundation to sort of a higher deal size, sort of larger customer profile. And so we're looking to bring in sort of more MQLs, more marketing leads for these new targets that we're going after, and we expect that to be a little less kind of self-serve driven, a little more sort of hands-on sales driven. So, creating content that can help sort of educate the target markets that we have about our system, about the ROI, about the value proposition. Putting out a lot more sort of helpful educational content that brings people in to want to talk to us. That's probably the primary focus here. And for us, we're looking for a strategic content creator. We're not wedded to any one type of format. It doesn't just have to be a bunch of blog posts in a quarter. It doesn't have to, just be sort of any one thing. We want someone to really look at the space. We've got a lot of different companies generally in the space. We want to really make our name with content and build our brand. So, we got clear sort of business goals, but there's a lot of ways to get there. So, looking for a creative thinker that's got nice experience in content and can really sort of think about the full picture and where we might want to go with content. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. We have a couple content marketing manager roles on the site right now, but each is so different. Like in one case, it's purely editorial. Like it's someone who will manage a group of freelancers. They'll assign topics, do the editing, etc. In another case, it's someone who's really focused on content creation. Like that individual will be the one producing most of the content. Do you have an idea Or are you kind of open to this person being the main content creator, or or will they have some help with the content creation piece?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're already in a flow where we're tapping multiple freelancers depending on the project. So we need a strong writer, ideally like the best writer in the company. But that doesn't mean that every single piece of content flows for them. We want them to sort of continue to just always operate strategically. Where does it make sense for them to personally be creating the content, really putting their time in, versus what might make sense to outsource and be sort of the editor for, or maybe we partner with another company. So yeah, I mean, I think the writing chops need to be there. Ideally, there's a good eye for just sort of visual presentation of content, but it's going to be a mix of working externally, internally. Yeah.
Cool, cool. That's awesome. One thing that stood out to me on the job ad, which we'll obviously link to, people should go read it, obviously, um, was this person would also manage lifecycle email. That stood out to me. I thought that was really cool because that's kind of it's sort of dabbling in product marketing a little bit, but like at least from my perspective, I think it's great when content managers are doing that because it forces them to really understand the product and understand what the user is doing. Are there any other kind of product marketing ish things that this person might touch on?
Yeah. Well, yeah. On that first part, I'm glad you called that out. I mean, for sure, we're looking for someone who thinks about sort of communication and email throughout a customer's life cycle. And I think definitely partnering with product marketing, thinking about how different pieces of content make sense for different steps in the journey, and also can think about, all right, so how do we get that content to them, depending on where they are. So that's an important piece of this role, and so it's not purely top of funnel or see the multiple sort of stages of the top of funnel that we
Yeah.
want you to think through. And yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question in terms of other product marketing pieces. I'd say, on sort of the biggest level is that we're still in the process of trying to sort of really coin and own a category here.
Mm.
We're part of a very large category of sort of web documents, of which there's lots of different sort of slices emerging. And so as we continue to sort of learn about what our customers are doing, sort of interesting new use cases, that spills directly into content creation, and really helping people sort of understand, well, hey, what is this sort of new category around smart documents? How do we sort of see this convergence of design and sort of transactional elements and automation? And so there's going to be a lot of sort of product category creation work that ideally will also help us drive business, but I think it will come from a product marketing sort of mindset at times.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. We're actually working on a category creation course for Superbad, which I will make sure this person gets access to when it's ready. Um, Applications. Are there certain things in a resume, a LinkedIn profile, a writing sample that would make an individual stand out to you?
I mean, I think ideally the combination of high quality content with sort of clear information about the results that the campaigns that had driven. I'm well aware that like there's no silver bullet where just like one piece of content brings in all this business, but I do want to hear about sort of the end to end thinking of what were we trying to accomplish from a business standpoint. Here was the sort of content that we created for that strategy, and here's results that we got. So I really want someone to be thinking in that sort of end to end process. So that's one. Another one is just original content. Like I'm saying, we're not wedded to any sort of one format or one way to do things. What we're trying to do is build a brand, build differentiation. And so where there's opportunities to just show creativity, show sort of thinking outside the box, that's definitely attractive as well.
Cool. That's awesome. For folks who are interested, obviously there's going to be links to where you can go and apply. I'll also just offer if you want someone to take a quick look at your resume or your writing samples, just shoot me an email. I'd be happy to do that. Um, cool. Chris, anything that I didn't ask you about this role that I should have?
I just say, the company is a really great place to work. It's a global culture between sort of, Australia and the US and Europe. You got a really sort of interesting broad scope of voices and perspectives, and a really thoughtful, hardworking group of people, and very creative. So I think I've worked at a number of tech companies. I think this is probably one of the best environments for a content creator because it's a creative tool in itself and it's a creative culture. And so I think you'll feel a lot of kind of opportunity here to kind of like make the most of content.
That's cool. I love it. I love it. Cool. Well, we're going to talk to Mark Tanner next. So stick around to hear from founder about the company and the role also. Chris, really appreciate your time and look forward to sending some good folks your way here. Okay, cool. I'm here with Mark Tanner, co-founder and COO of Qwilr. Mark, how are you?
I'm very well, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We have spoken before about Qwilr. I would love if you could just maybe give us an update on sort of the state of things. And then maybe I'd be curious just to hear, or for more for the benefit of others, because I know a little bit, but just hear more about you and what your role is like.
Yeah, for sure. So let me start meta and sort of go down. So Quiller is the core idea behind Quiller is that files like Word, PowerPoint, PDF suck in the age of the web. And so, our particular way that we think they suck is especially for like business teams. So, sales, marketing, customer success, teams like that. As you're communicating with your customers, sort of having these like static old documents is incredibly painful. And so what Quiller does is it allows you to create all those docs as simple but beautiful web pages and have them be like very engaging, like much more beautiful, obviously with mobile friendly, whatever else, but then layer in all those sort of extra things that are sort of very useful and sort of kind of actually moving a little bit towards that sort of almost web appification sort of type thing. So we've got like a quote block that, with pricing that works much more like e-commerce. So here's the base price. Do you want this additional extra? Oh, I do want this one. I don't want that one. And yes, I want that as an annual subscription or I want 5 of them or whatever. And that obviously live updates the price and then you can accept, e-sign, pay all on any device. That then will sync up with your maybe Salesforce or HubSpot or your other CRMs. It might ping across to QuickBooks or Xero. It might ping on Slack channel being like, hey, you closed the deal or whatever. But it's like, how do you sort of, we live in this like SaaS cloud world, and how do you sort of bring these like, frankly, often very dumb and very ugly files sort of into that world and allow them to be interactive, interesting. Obviously, because they're a web page, you can get some interesting analytics out of it as well. And so, my prospects actually engaging with stuff. Anyway, so that's all our sort of view there is sort of we care about that. As a company, so we did our Series A about a year ago. We did a $10 million round. We're now about about 60 folks. We've got a team of so almost all of our product and engineering team is here in Sydney. I'm an Aussie. I live in Sydney with my co-founder, Dylan. Everybody else is remote. So we've had a sort of hybrid remote first culture. So everybody on the sort of the go-to-market side of the business across sales, marketing, success, support has all been remote from day one because the vast majority of our customers are in the US and Canada. Mm-hmm. And so maybe not the vast majority, but let's say a slight majority are there. And then there's a whole bunch in Europe and of course in Australia, New Zealand, across Asia. And so we've sort of had a very strong remote first culture for a while. And so my side of the business is, Dylan, my co-founder, is a designer and engineer and very much lives in product land, and he's the CEO. And my side, my experience is very much on customer focused side. So really around sales, marketing, customer success, and like, operations type stuff as well. And so my day-to-day is like working closely with those teams. I still, to this day, still lead the sales team, although one day soon we will find no doubt a head of sales to come in and relieve me from that and do a far better job. But yeah, so that's sort of, where Qwilr is today. We're probably 25, 30 folks in Sydney and about 30 folks remote across the world, with about at least a dozen in the States. And that's probably our main area of investment sort of in growth. And we sort of expect this role to be US or Canada based, very much sort of, working with our marketing team over there and yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, it's exciting. Sounds like you guys are in a really cool spot.
We are.
When you think about content at Qwilr, like, as you bring on a new role, are you thinking about, or maybe I should rephrase this question. Are you thinking about one thing in particular, like educating people, like building out this category, which sounds like some things people are familiar with, but also like a new version of it? Is it about sales enablement? Is it about all of those things plus more?
Yeah. I think that the real challenge of this role, and the challenge that like Chris, our head of marketing has, just like, in a broad sense, is, and a challenge the company has, like a really important one, is how do you explain what we do quickly, simply, and easily, and then how do you also sort of tell stories around that? And I think that we are in this sort of ecosystem, like we're friends with the team at Notion and Coda, who are sort of obviously doing amazing stuff on this sort of like, what is the next generation of documents? You might even throw in like Airtable and other companies like that. But they're very much focused on like the internal collaboration aspect, like, how does sales and marketing work internally? And our entire focus is that externally focused thing of how a company is speaking to their customers, and how, what is the buying experience like for those customers, and how to make that, especially in a remote first world, like have that collateral be able to do all of the things that the web can do, where it's not just a dumb file. It's like, with like, say, appendixes at the end, you can have it, this beautiful interactive thing, which, oh, I want to learn a bit more about this. Well, why can't I click and have that expand out and go a bit deeper, or watch a video, or embed whatever content, etc. And so like we have like, obviously we've got thousands of customers. It's not like we're nowhere on this journey. But as when you want to say crossing the chasm or whatever else, like as you're trying to sort of bring more and more of these ideas into the mainstream, I think we're looking for someone, for this role to, work with us to help us sort of tell that story, and both understand our own customers, but also understand the industry, and sort of see how that's going. And sort of, there's definitely going to be a big like strategic thinking part to this role of like, how do we sort of position ourselves in market? How do we, this sort of emerging category, of which there are a couple of things we sort of touch on that are existing categories, but none of them are sort of totally satisfying, frankly. And so like how we're sort of navigating our way through that, how are we positioning ourselves, how are we thinking about that? And frankly, listen, I've sculled the Kool-Aid, but like, it's my view that in like, whatever, 10 years time, we're not still going to be in this sort of world of just like static PDFs and Word docs and whatever else. I do think that much as, Google Docs did this first important leap towards like completely static to like this sort of collaborative experience. And I think there's been a few other little things where it's like, DocuSign layered on, like, okay, you can now accept a doc, or doc send, oh, you can now have a little bit of analytics around it. If you just embrace the web and sort of start from that first principles one, rather than like doing a wrapper around a file, you can kind of get it all at once. And I think there's so much power in that, about like being SaaS enabled and having analytics and having transactional elements, and all these things sort of living together and interacting with each other is actually even more powerful. But it's not something that someone, comes to work and thinks to themselves, what I really need? I really need to create all of my customer facing collateral as a web page. And I think that's a real like challenge and interesting one. And so we're looking for someone who is, I think like eager to come and work on something big like that, and work with, a great, but, still small, scrappy team. We're not, again, 50 to 60 folks. We're not nothing, but we're not sort of a big behemoth either.
Yeah.
And so again, a heavily biased person over here, but I think it's a really exciting, like an interesting role. And I think for the right person, it could be a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, you're selling me. I mean, as someone who's worked in content for a long time, like this is the type of challenge that's really exciting. When you get to take this thing, which is new and cool, and there's this vision for it over a long period of time. And then I'm so glad you mentioned that there is a strategic element to this job too, because for the right person, it's not going to be just about like come in and start writing. It's going to be like, let's really think carefully about what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are we going to measure it? How is it affecting the business? All those good things. Versus, some of the roles I've come across recently, which are like, we need SEO content. So come on in, we're going to give you a list of keywords and get to work. Or, we need case studies and we need you to crank out 3 or 4 every month. So hope you like doing that. Like really so for folks like who are considering applying, like think carefully about that. Like think carefully about the opportunity to come into a business, like work closely with the marketing team, really understand the product, understand the market, and start working on a strategy that could have a really significant effect on the company. I think it's really cool.
100%. And I'd also say, like, I think there's no limit on who they work with inside the company. Like, I think there's at that nice stage where it's like, they may find that there's, whether it's working with me or my co-founder Dylan, like whether it's, which I'm sure there'll be a bit of that, depending on, probably possibly quite a bit. We've also got some, we obviously with the marketing team, no doubt, but like, it may also be the case that like they really want to go deep in some parts of the product and they're working closely with some PMs on stuff. They might be doing some stuff with the sales team on various things, like we're not at a stage where we have some like strict rules-based system of you have to do this. Like we just care about good people doing good work and having a good, having good results at the end of it. And I think there's definitely, I think again, this role is obviously you need to be a good writer and you need to be a good editor. So, there's a fundamental parts of it, but I think there is a strategic part here. You will be working with, whether it's others, bringing you on board in time, obviously freelancers or others in that space, no doubt. But as this, knock on wood, company grows and team grows and everything else, I think it's also a nicely positioned role to sort of allow for some good career growth as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think again, like we're looking for someone special for this role. And this is why we're chatting to you, Jimmy, because like I've got a bit of a history with you and have known you for a number of years, but like, I think that, and I know that you've done excellent work in the past, and I've sort of always followed your, from Vero through Animals through now, like, I think, we want to find someone, like really strong and special who can do, good work. And we're investing in this, we're investing in other things to try to find someone good. We're not just, popping a job ad on LinkedIn and, sort of, if this isn't just, I'll be honest. There are some jobs where you can kind of just do that and get away with it, and you'll find someone pretty good, as long as you've got a thoughtful hiring process. We really are trying to sort of get out there for this role and try to find someone special. Right. So if you're someone special, no, sorry, I'll leave the steak knives alone.
Yeah. Will you be part of the interview process?
Yeah.
What, as you chat with people, are there certain things that you're looking for? I mean, whether it's, obviously be looking for, like you said, strong at writing and editing. Are there certain things on a resume you're looking for? Or, certain work experience or anything else that might help an individual stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a thing that we believe in, and this is to be clear, not sort of done sort of upfront too much. I mean, sometimes we'll have a little bit of this, but it's, I think a bit of it is like, in my conversations. So I think we try to do for all roles is like, try to have you do some amount of the work. And we pay people for their time to come and, do some task and, whatever it is. But like, we sort of do, I really do in previous roles sort of like this, I really do, we might have some, I actually haven't spoken to Chris about exactly what the task is, but like, I'd be keen to hear some level of, everyone can look at our website and can look at our competitors and can start thinking a little bit about like, what our category is and how we should be positioning, and hopefully have watched this video or whatever else. But I think like, I'm keen to just hear your thoughts. And I think, and hear on the strategy side, just like, just hear a little bit of how you would think about it, how you would approach it, what sort of things you would be interested to explore. And I'm not looking for perfect answers. I don't know. If I had perfect answers, I would just, that all would be easy. But I think like, just keen to sort of hear how you think. And I think, very interested to go on that journey. And then also, again, I love reading, I assume there'd be some tasks that would sort of align with a little bit of like, show off your skills. And so, whether that's writing a piece or writing a bit of a strategy doc or something along those lines, again, nothing onerous, but I do love seeing a bit of the output. I think I work in sales. There are plenty of people who can interview wonderfully who don't necessarily sort of bring the goods. And I think we just love seeing, love having some people, again, do the work. And again, caveat, anything we do, we always make sure we pay fairly for.
That's cool. That's good.
But yeah.
We ran a survey in our Slack community about test projects as part of hiring for content marketing roles. And it's pretty interesting. The biggest thing that people, you've already nailed the two things that people complain the most about, which was not getting paid for the work, and also kind of a narrow scope of project. So it's not some gigantic thing.
No. It should be a few hours. Like it's not like a half hour thing, right? But like it should be a small thing. You should be paid properly. And like from memory, we generally, it's like $50 an hour is what our expected sort of thing would be. which is, there might be people out there who are like, that's lower than my normal. Others, maybe it's higher than my normal or whatever, but like we sort of feel it's a fair amount. And also it's like, we don't do it straight up, right? Like we do it towards the end of the process. So we're not asking 50 people to do it. We're asking 3 or 4 or 5. It's sort of, it's a sort of, it's a smaller sort of subset to sort of try to sort of understand what's going on. I think there are a lot of companies who do that, perhaps with good intentions, but do it in a really crap way. And I do think it can be pretty exploitative, and there's a lot of junk out there. But I would also just say, like on the flip side, I think it matters that you don't just rely on interviews for roles like this. We really, like, whether it's engineering or whatever it is, like just do the work. And I think having some understanding of that really has helped us hire well and hire, not just lovely people who are very nice and all that sort of stuff, but also people who just, are good at their job and care about their craft. And something that Dylan, who is like very much, Dylan cares, my co-founder cares about craft and cares about people who want to improve their craft and get better at their craft and sort of, love it. And I think that's a cultural thing across Qwilr that we all, take, whether it's in design or engineering or product or sales, like people in sales, should take real pride in their craft. Like there is something about being an excellent salesperson that is like a wonderful, powerful thing.
Yeah.
And there's like a whole bunch of gross, lame salespeople out there. There's also a whole bunch of gross content marketing out there, frankly, but there's also some stuff out there that's like truly fantastic.
Yeah. I love it. I think that for the right person, the writing project is a wonderful opportunity to flex your muscles, because it's so often individuals' good work is, it ends up being a good designer creates visual assets for it. An editor tidies it up at the end. Maybe someone else assigned the topic to you. And so it becomes this collaborative effort. Whereas like typically in a writing project, it's all you and you get to show what you can do. And that's fun. That's fun for the right person.
I think so too. And I think like that you've hit on a good point, which is like, sometimes people are like, well, you can like just look at my portfolio. Like we had this like product person who was like, well, you can just look at the things that we shipped at Atlassian. And I'm like, listen, buddy, I'm aware of how large corporations work. Like when I was at Google, it's not like one person ships the product. Like it's, like there's, there is, and I think you are trying to tease out some understanding. And you're also trying to remove like, whatever. We're not perfect at this, but we try, like all the assignments are blinded. Like we don't know who of the final candidates, we don't know who did what, we try to be like, candidate C really spoke to me. And, maybe that was someone who previously I hadn't thought that highly of. And, who knows what all our unconscious biases are, et cetera. But again, you're sort of making a few attempts along that path to sort of be thoughtful there. I think like just, this is a side note, but like hiring is such an incredibly important part of company building. And it is genuinely very hard. And I think the candidate experience really matters because you're only as good as, like, it's such a cliche, but you are only as good as your people. And if you give a whole bunch of people a bad experience of your company, like they're not going to refer their friends to come work for you. Even if they don't ideally you have an experience that like, even if you don't get the job, you're like, that's a good company with good people who give a shit, who work hard, who are working on an interesting problem. And like, I would apply, because like, if you get to our final 3, it's usually not the case. It's like, oh, we don't hire you because you suck. It's like, there were many tough decisions here and maybe you're actually amazing, but like on balance, we slightly felt this other person. And like, we've had 2 people on my side of the fence, on my team, who didn't get the job the first time around, who came on board later. And like, that's awesome. Like, that's like cool. Fantastic. And that's sort of, I think that anyway, so hiring is hard. Much as companies have some bad processes here, I do also think there are a bunch of them who are trying to do good things and try to figure out a right way of doing it. It's just that sometimes it's just hard.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a big tangent.
That's all good. I mean, this is like the type of context that I think is really good for people to know, to hear about ahead of applying. For folks who are interested, there's gonna be buttons to the side below where you can do that. I'm gonna link obviously to the full job description. Go read that. I mentioned this during a chat with Chris. If you have writing samples or resume or whatever, you want someone to provide some feedback on it, hit me up in Slack or shoot me an email. I'd be happy to provide a little feedback before you send your application in. Mark, anything I should have asked you about Qwilr or about this role that I did not?
Surely, that's fine. I think you can find us online, and you can find me and Chris online, and I think hopefully I suppose like the one little thing I would say is that there are. I just encourage you to apply. I think some people, we all hear that again, that old cliche of people who look at a JD and like, oh, I meet 70% of this, but I'm not, and I'm perfect for 70%, and I'm only good for a few things, or I'm not quite there. I would just always encourage you just to apply, and we just love to hopefully have a quick chat and sort of go from there. We're always eager for more applications and more chances to chat than less. So please, even if you don't feel like you're 100% perfect on everything, that's fine. No one's 100% perfect on everything. I think, we're trying to aim high for this role, but we also, sometimes you meet someone who's a little earlier in their career or has been focused in their career on a certain path for some reason or whatever else. And, it doesn't mean they can't be spectacular across a broader spectrum. So
sure. Cool. I love it. Cool. I'm excited to get this out to our folks. We'll be sending some people your way shortly here. Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate the time. I know you have plenty going on, so I really appreciate that you've taken time to do this.
Pleasure, Jimmy.